Open your cerebral cortex and shift your lobes into upper beta phase, because you are going to have Bitcoin knowledge transmitted directly into your vestibulocochlear. Your host at Bitcoin Knowledge is Trace Mayer, an early Bitcoin advocate since it cost $0.25, but this is not intended to be investment advice. A doctor of jurisprudence, but this is definitely not legal advice. And an investor in core cryptocurrency infrastructure, including Armory, BitPay, Kraken, and Mitagio, but this is not a recommendation of those services. Here, you get fed via direct mind download with pure and free Bitcoin knowledge.
Welcome back. We've got Justin Blinko. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Coinapult. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Trace. Great to be here.
So, can you tell us a little bit about Coinapult? It's actually a pretty cool service. You got all types of fun things over there. So, just give us a brief overview of what it does.
Yeah, so Coinapult was founded in 2012 by Ira Miller and Eric Voorhees, and started out with the ability to send Bitcoins over SMS and email. So a lot of people back then getting their first Bitcoins actually used Coinapult's underlying plumbing to get those. Since then, we've been refining our service, hopefully in an improving direction, and added some other applications on top of that. One of them being Locks, which is a service that allows both businesses and consumers to protect themselves against the Bitcoin price volatility. And the other focus we've been doing is internationalizing. So the company was founded in the US, but we've taken some steps to make ourselves more of a global presence.
Yeah, you guys all moved down to Panama City, right?
That's correct.
Where it's nice and warm.
Always hot.
Away from the cold, frigid New York. And I love the name, Coinapult. It's kind of like a catapult, but for throwing Bitcoins at people.
Yep.
You can throw them via email or via SMS, like you said. Are you starting to see some traction gaining in places like Africa or these developing countries?
Africa, not hugely. We've been talking to some people in Africa that are really excited about the service and kind of understand how it could change things in their country, but we're not seeing huge volume yet. I think it's mostly a visibility problem of, if you live in Kenya, have you heard of Coinapult? No. So one of our next struggles probably in 2015 is how do we advertise our services and communicate what we can do. But we are seeing pretty good accelerating growth in Latin America.
Like Argentina or New Mexico? Or?
Argentina, some in Mexico, Venezuela, and also Brazil, which is where we are.
Nice. Yeah, we're in nice sunny Brazil on Copacabana Beach, just sipping our drinks, trying to do a podcast. It's just so nice here.
It is really nice.
No wonder they don't get much done in South America.
We're in our suits and looking at everybody on the beach enjoying themselves, and here we are talking about crypto, which luckily is what we love to do.
Yeah, no kidding. So you've got this new service, these locks.
Yeah.
It's really quite an innovative approach. There's BitReserve and then Coinapult. Yeah. I've actually interviewed Halsey Miner for the podcast. What exactly is happening with these locks?
With locks, it's similar to what you could do on an exchange. So if you're a professional Bitcoin trader, you could go to Kraken, open an account, go through the KYC process, send your Bitcoin and do some trading, hedge, get dollars, eventually cash out if you wanted to, or buy back into Bitcoin, hopefully at a lower price and make a profit. So Locks differs from that model in that we try to make it a little bit more simple for people that aren't of a financial background. So you won't see any limit orders. Basically, there's a price to lock and a price to unlock, and you choose the amount.
Which is based on the current spot prices.
Yeah, so
plus the premiums or whatever.
Yep. So we have an index price that pulls from all the major exchanges. We have accounts there, and we basically do arbitrage between all the exchanges. So we pull what we think is the globally appropriate price, and we're putting our money behind that by 24/7 offering trades based on that, and then a 0.75 spread in each direction. So 1.5 between the bid and ask.
Now, in your terms of service, it's the liabilities are actually in Bitcoins, right?
Yeah, so
it's different from BitReserve, if I understand it correctly. From what I understand, BitReserve will actually have the assets. They'll have the gold, or they'll have the yen, or the euros, or the dollars, or whatever. But you guys have the Bitcoin, and then it just changes the amount of Bitcoins in the account based on the current price of the underlying?
Based on our terms of service, I think we innovated the term. We called it a variable Bitcoin balance. So is where in like a blockchain wallet, you'd have a stable Bitcoin balance. If I have 1 Bitcoin, you have a Bitcoin. We call ours a variable Bitcoin balance. So if you locked dollars and the price of Bitcoins goes down, your variable Bitcoin balance goes up, or vice versa. But similar to BitReserve, we are actually buying the underlying assets to hedge ourselves against the
exchange rate volatility.
Exactly. So within a minute, usually, of any lock or unlock, or we also serve business partners as a liquidity partner. Within a minute of any of those transactions, we've hedged ourselves.
So when we're looking at the amount of customer funds, it's all 100% reserves?
Yes,
right?
100% reserves.
Is there like a transparency report or an audit report or anything along those natures yet that kind of establish the authenticity of that assertion?
We haven't introduced anything publicly yet. We've been looking at many options and haven't yet been satisfied with the ability to not compromise the privacy and security of our customers with the obvious benefit of publicly giving provable transaction chains and asset amounts.
Yeah, because you know those gold bugs, like me chief among them, right? I know over at Gold Money, we've got this Gold Money guarantee, and every single bar on the pallet in the vault is like counted physically every 3 months by our auditor inspectorate. So there's just this very solid like chain of integrity, chain of custody, and proof like audits on a regular basis. So I was just wondering like if Coinapult's doing that or going to be going in that direction as more funds get under management, because it is very expensive for us to do those audits.
Yeah.
But you know, hopefully the customers over there appreciate it and are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the part of the balance that we're trying to find is, you know, we've been talking to companies that do insurance, so actually get the funds fully insured, whether they're in a Bitcoin balance or a LOX balance. And with LOX, you know, it's certainly you can make it so that we never hold any Bitcoin at all. It can come from another wallet. We lock it and then send it out to another wallet, and we never hold the Bitcoin. So it's just holding, you know, traditional assets, which insurance companies are more comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah.
And we've also been talking with auditing firms and explaining our business model and trying to find the right partner that understands our cost model, and we're working on figuring out how much our customers are willing to pay. We right now don't charge anything to hold LOX. You know, you can hold it for as long as you want, and there's no fee to that. So if you start adding insurance and other costs, you know, we might have to add in, you know, different tiers of service or something to do.
Yeah. So where is Coinapult thinking of going? Like now that you've got these locks out, are you looking at like just expanding the amount of locks, or are there going to be additional products coming out?
So we think that our SMS launch could potentially bring on a lot of mainstream users that wouldn't use Bitcoin otherwise. So let's say you're living in Canada and you have family in Africa and you want to send them money back. Bitcoin's relatively easy to acquire in Canada. There's, you know, exchanges and Bitcoin ATMs. You can send that money via lock over SMS, and your family member would get that $10 worth of locks, and that would be $10 worth until they wanted to exchange it or, you know, buy something online, and so they wouldn't have to worry about, you know, what is the Bitcoin price today. You know, they're not having to log into Bitfinex and figure out what's going on.
So this could really drastically reduce these remittance costs because people can still remit in their regular numeraire, like Canadian dollars or US dollars, but at the same time, the receiver is able to control this all with SMS, so they get down to the local bodega or whatever, you know, where the person hands them the $10 of cash, and when they send them over the text message that controls the $10 worth of Bitcoins. Am I seeing this correctly?
Yeah, and we're, you know, trying to, you know, see what people are using our services for and talk to our users, and we don't know all the cool things that it could potentially do, so we're trying to get a better sense of, you know, how are you using this, and then improve our service based on that. So one thing that a number of people have brought up is the actual, you know, what about could I physically hold the gold or get the gold out? So we've been talking with bullion companies and you know, working to make a deal where I've got a gold ounce, I want it shipped to me, a gold ounce, a locked gold ounce, and want to cash it out in gold. So I think there's a lot of potential partnerships with traditional financial companies or payments companies where we can kind of be part of the bridge between the crypto and the traditional financial world.
Have you guys thought of using things like Ripple then to hold some of these balances? Or, is that kind of on the radar? Or right now it seems like you just log in and it's like your balance in the Quintipolt system, but you can't actually like take the locked gold out of Quintipolt.
Yeah,
but if it were Ripple, then perhaps people could.
Currently, it's only Bitcoin in and Bitcoin out. That's the only option within our system, unless you're a KYC business with us. We haven't looked at using Ripple gateways or becoming a Ripple gateway or that system closely, but we are starting to look into that direction now that we have everything up and stable to try to bring on those type of value-added services that would make the user experience better.
Why the remittance business? Like, what do you see there?
Well, if you've ever actually done a remittance or even just gone through the motions of seeing, okay, I'm in Canada and I want to send money to Brazil, you see that the fees that they charge, especially for the non-mainstream currencies outside of the US dollar and euro and yen, the fees start at 10% and go up from there, especially on smaller amounts. People talk about Bitcoin's killer app, and remittance certainly could be that, but obviously Bitcoin is just a protocol, and the people that are sending remittances can't think about what's going on in the background. So we think that Lox could provide that front-end friendly interface that people could use in a familiar way to transmit value throughout the world without worrying that it's the blockchain and this trustless money system that's actually doing the heavy lifting.
Because, you're transferring at the speed of a text message. I was in Singapore last year, and down at the mall, there were 3 floors, and you had all the house cleaning ladies, in line, thousands of them. It was unbelievable, all standing in line to fill out their remittance form to send money back to Bangladesh or the Philippines or wherever.
Yeah.
If you're able to do this with the speed that you're talking about, then, that drastically changes the game. Not only is it cheaper and faster, but it costs less, too.
And you don't have to leave your couch.
And it's more private, good, cheap, and fast. It could be a real game changer in this remittance market.
And a lot of if you have a lot of listeners in the U.S., customer service even at banks, although people complain about it, is relatively good. There's not long lines. Someone will, if you have a complaint, listen to you. In Panama, it was just payday last Saturday, and I walked to the mall, and there's a banking area. And I actually took some pictures. Every single bank had a line out the door, probably about 30 minutes.
Holy cow.
And Western Union had the same thing. So
everybody's sending money on payday.
There's real lost productivity by all these people having to use these legacy systems where they're literally getting up to the front of the line, writing the name of the person in pen of the information that they want to send. Someone else is then taking all that information, writing it in the computer. Then they're using the banking system in Swift, and then the same thing's happening on the reverse side. So you can see why they have to charge those fees.
All this manual labor, all this time-consuming bureaucracy.
Yeah.
That is just, it's like the DMV. It's just horrible.
Yeah. And they don't really, they don't care that much if the money gets there. You're not a very profitable customer if you're sending $200. So,
right. They're not
maybe
going to.
They made $10, $20. If something goes wrong, you're, get in the line back again and we'll look into it.
Yeah, the cost for customer service is not even worth what the person pays in their fees. And it's just the whole remittance area, I think, is just ripe for disruption like this.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's ripe for disruption, but Bitcoin by itself I don't think solves it, because you need people on both ends that can you need organization on both ends to get into the right currency in and out, and potentially provide the right legal aspects of complying with AML and KYC. So I think in the Bitcoin space, whereas Western Union has basically developed the scale to be able to do this in 180 countries, in the Bitcoin space it's going to be a lot of partnerships. So Quintipolt working with people in a bunch of countries, or
Well, have you seen the HelloBit app?
Yeah.
Because that's really fun. It's kind of like an Uber, but for human ATMs and
there's 50 companies potentially that have some insight into how to do this, and they're building the technology today. It might not, some of them are released, and some are coming down the pike. I think in the next year you're going to see just tons of competition in that space of people that understand their local market and understand Bitcoin and can act as like a node in this decentralized system.
Exactly.
And compete for the business on beating Western Union on price and customer service because their underlying costs are so much less.
So most people, haven't even traveled outside the U.S., assuming people listening to this podcast are mainly U.S. But I think that shapes a lot of our view of the world. Like, you've now lived in Panama how long?
I've been there for about 18 months.
18 months living full-time down in Panama, traveling out for conferences or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Like, what have you learned? Like, what have you learned from this experience of traveling abroad, dealing with money, trying to get money moved around, like trying to buy groceries, all these things?
So Coinapult's slogan is destroying payment obstacles.
Making it easy.
Back to the catapult, and that was kind of where the tagline came from. And I think looking through it, the perspective of a Bitcoiner and living in Panama, there are so many payment obstacles in the world that need to be destroyed, that aren't adding any value, that the field is green for anyone that can figure out how to do it. Many of our employees that are Panamanian, they don't have bank accounts. When we first, were getting set up and didn't know exactly how everything worked, we got one of our employees set up with a bank account, sent a wire from the U.S. They were charged $185 for the receiving fee for a $400 wire.
Unbelievable. They were charged like 50% almost on a $400 wire?
Yeah.
And how much did it cost to send it? $35?
Yeah, $35,
probably?
$45. Depending on which
so
bank.
That's over 50% in fees.
Yeah, banks aren't good for transactions under, call it $2,000. They're not good for transactions over $2,000.
I don't want to pay $2,000 fee on a $200 fee on a $2,000 transaction. That's absurd too.
And that's living in the U.S. Even though wire fees we think are kind of steep, $45 just to send my money, to France, and in the time that it would take to ship an anvil, that doesn't seem right. But in the developing world, it's much, much worse. First, you probably don't even have a bank account. 70% of, I'm pulling that stat out of nowhere, but it's roughly 70% of the world does not have access to a bank account or traditional financial services. And when you see, when you actually meet people and talk to them about their lives not having access to this, it's like, they're totally disconnected from shopping on the internet, from earning money on the internet. If they've got skills, learning web design skills.
I think the Philippines is now 20% of GDP is from outsourced freelance work. And I've got a friend that runs a charity called Educate, and they basically train entrepreneurs in Uganda. They're integrated with the public schools and everything, and I think that the entrepreneurs, they earn twice as much per month if they go through the Educate course. And so it's really helping lift that standard of living. And from what I understand, it costs as much in monthly account maintenance fees for the bank as their cell phone does. Why have a bank account? I mean, that's just the monthly maintenance fees. You get dinged with a ton of bajillion other fees over there too, when you can just replace all of that with something like Coinapult, SMS over your phone, and you're able to send and store your money on there.
Yeah, I can say from the perspective of running a Bitcoin company and paying people globally, I don't know how I would go insane if I didn't have Bitcoin as the option. We have employees around the world, and if on payday, it's one click and they're paid, and there's no fees.
Yeah, isn't it just crazy? Like, did you see the transaction like a couple weeks ago? $84 million in one transaction, 4 cent fee.
Yeah.
Like, what other system can do that? Like, they can send pennies or send tens of millions of dollars, all for little or no fees. Like, what other system can do that?
Yeah, and when you get you use Bitcoin as the underlying architecture, you can have companies like ours, like internal sends. There's no fee. So for both Coinapult users, yes, there's the issue of centralization that traditional Bitcoiners.
Yeah, but you can always withdraw your Bitcoins out. Like,
yeah.
I think it's fine to have different centralized entities within the ecosystem.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to take your Bitcoins out whenever you want, or according to the terms of service that you knowingly and willfully and with plenty of understanding have agreed to.
Yeah.
Because I think our current banking system, they rely too much on this implied consent. They think that people have consented to not actually owning their bank account. I mean, you're an unsecured creditor at the end of the day.
Yeah, the terms
Most people don't understand the money in their bank account's not their money, it's the bank's money, and you're an unsecured creditor of the bank.
Yeah, you're giving them a loan, and they're taking that and doing what they want with it. It's not your $2,000 that you deposited, it's theirs now.
Yeah, and the irony is that it's actually got a negative interest rate. You know, you're paying your monthly account fee, you're paying negative interest rates in Germany.
Yep.
All of this craziness, like there's really no particular reason to have bank accounts anymore.
Yeah, not to say anything against the inflation-adjusted rate, there are really negative interest rates.
Yeah, they're slower, they're more expensive, the customer service is bad, there's huge bureaucracy. Like all of this, services like Coinapult makes payments easy. Yeah. Right?
But banks are on every street, and people are used to those.
Well, we've had banks.
Barriers.
We've had banks for 500 years, right? But things are changing. Technology's changing.
Yeah, I've talked to some bankers that are recognizing that things are changing. They're not ready to make any changes to their business model, but some of the smart ones are like, so tell me how this works and how could we integrate it? They're starting to ask the questions. There's a few banks that have made some real moves, but I think it'll be interesting to see over the next 5 years which big name banks cease to exist because they haven't adapted. They're holding to that old world model. They're selling buggy whips and the automobile is here.
Well, I think we're about out of time for this particular interview. Is there anything that you're most concerned about or most optimistic about in Bitcoin land?
I'm most optimistic about, it seems like every month I see more and more usability of Bitcoin. So I actually had an aha moment like 2 weeks ago. I was just doing my work and looking some things up, and 4 different times throughout the day I had to either pay or was asked to donate, and each time there was Bitcoin accepted. I got through a service that provides private browsing. I forget which service it is, and they asked for a recommended donation. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to whip out my credit card, and I'm not gonna, my recommended donation is gonna be $0 because, but there was Bitcoin accepted, and so I sent them the recommended $10, and each time I whip out my phone, I scan the QR, and the transaction is done in 2 seconds. Couldn't be easier. So seeing that, obviously I consider myself a Bitcoin evangelist, but even if I wasn't, that this is really easier. When you have Bitcoin.
The utility's coming. People like yourselves are building out the solutions that the market's demanding.
Yeah, every day.
And it's getting this critical mass.
Yeah, there's just more and more, and the difficult question of 2 years ago when my friends that weren't in Bitcoin, well, what do I do with it? Well, potentially you can do X, Y, and Z. And now we see, now I'm really seeing you can do X, Y, and Z. And it's starting to happen. So I just from talking to people at this conference and the others that are building throughout the world, most of it hasn't really been released. The coolest ideas are still in incubation. They're in people's brains trying to get coded and built to production. So yeah. I'm very optimistic about that.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time for this interview, for building things out. Justin Blincoe, Chief Operating Officer at Coinapult. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for the time, Trace.
Be sure to get a copy of the free Bitcoin Guide at freebitcoinguide.com. Got a question or suggestion? Record your voice at bitcoin.kn. Don't be shy. To help the show, share bitcoin.kn with friends, post about it on Reddit, and otherwise spam the interwebs. Your iTunes comments and 5-star reviews are very important to us. Please continue tuning in to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast, where we release interviews with the top people in the Bitcoin world. Now take some choline and let that Bitcoin knowledge consolidate.